It's really understanding like there is a calories in, calories out perspective to it, but yeah, there's so many factors involved that it's not black and white. Like based on how much protein you eat, your body needs to digest that, and you burn more calories based on the thermic effect of food. And then you're not necessarily trusting a lot of calorie trackers because a lot of them overestimate, and you're not necessarily tracking like activities throughout the day, like doing dishes or walking to get groceries, stuff like that, that actually has more of an effect than what maybe like a half hour, hour of exercise has. Like the more active you are throughout the day, typically like burns more calories than what you would do in a workout. So it's like trying to account for a lot of different factors based on burning calories. Because yeah, if you're a kid in high school, you're pretty active throughout the day, and they're not necessarily tracking what they're eating. Like they can tell you they eat a lot, but a lot is different to one person and the next. So just trying to get a baseline for how much you're eating. And yeah, there's been studies that have shown you can eat 100 grams of protein in a meal and you'll use all 100 grams. Like we used to think there was a max or a ceiling to how much protein you could eat in a meal, but studies have come out and show that it's just a longer digestion window, and you'll still get the benefit of eating that many proteins, so or that much protein. So like just planning your meals beforehand and not trying to play catch up at night, I think is really important, because then you do get into the sleep factor. So I think planning, education is all really important towards that. And I think alongside the muscle health, I think people overlook the health of hormones and what nutrient deficiencies can do. Like we see the effects of lack of testosterone in men or estrogen alterations in women, and even stuff like thyroid stuff that's really important that you don't necessarily see, and you can't really see until there is a deficiency. You don't know you're lacking until maybe you're starting to lose hair, maybe you're starting to like your metabolism gets altered by thyroid, either hyper or hypo, and just a lot of different things that you don't really think might be related to your diet or nutrition, and they are just silent killers that it's hard to know without being educated. But that's why you kind of need to take the step to see, what am I eating, how many calories is this, am I getting enough nutrients through this, is the food I'm eating quality enough to have those nutrients, just stuff like that. It can be a big process, but that's why you either try to do that yourself or ask for help, because it is important, and you only need to do it one time and then you're set up for the basically rest of your life. You have that education and it's not going to waver. And just finding foods that you enjoy and can stick to. Like it doesn't have to be a daunting process. Like people fall apart from a diet because they get sick of eating and they want to go back to the processed food that tastes good. But just finding meals that you like, you enjoy. Like I have this weird trait where I can be like super consistent eating the same thing over and over and over again. So just finding your knacks. Maybe it's you finding a bunch of recipes, different recipes that you enjoy, but yeah, it differs for each individual.
Yeah, back to kind of the qualitative versus quantitative. A lot of the stuff, especially as a young person, you don't see, you get a lot of benefits from that qualitative perspective that I talk about of just trying to get your, protein, micronutrients, whatever it is, or even just not worrying about that at all. And like we have world class athletes who have terrible diets but are able to get away with it in spite of that from an athletic perspective. But I think eating that way for long periods of time, especially once you, as you age, as you are less active, I think that kind of comes back to haunt you. And that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing in our country. It's happening more with younger individuals, but people who have been eating this way for a long time are now, we talked about like cancer rate, infertility, Alzheimer's, dementia, just stuff like that that are constantly increasing. I think it's a lot of that is related to diet and what they're eating, as well as other lifestyle habits. But diet is a huge piece of that. And so it's kind of back to what we talked about last week of that short term versus long term mindset. It can be really hard, especially when you're young, to see what effect eating a certain way might have. Um, like you can get away with it, you can feel fine, you can get through your day, but I think it's thinking about 20 to 30 years ahead. Where do you want to be health wise, which can be really hard to put into perspective, but just thinking of your future self and where you want to be. And I think I've started to have that more of that mindset. I've always kind of had that like exercise wise and other areas, but now it's more so diet, which is a huge piece of that. So I think it's just having that long term mindset. And like you said, Jaden, just finding something that is sustainable, something that, don't change for 2 weeks and then fall off the wagon because you want to go back. Just finding something that you can sustain and not be perfect. That doesn't mean you can't have any processed food ever. Like I still treat myself with, a snack or dessert every once in a while or a good weekend meal. I'm gonna see Brandon tonight. Hopefully we'll eat something good
Oh yeah,
tonight. But
we grubbing.
yeah, it's just on a consistent basis, just being locked into what you're eating. And what's cool, and I think they mentioned this in the podcast, is just because you've been maybe eating poorly or exercising poorly for a long time, that doesn't mean you're lost forever. Like you can, just like even a few weeks of making changes, exercise, diet, kind of back to like the gene talk, like you can flip a lot of the stuff that's going on. It might not be a magic cure for everything, but a lot of stuff can be reversed and you can lower your risk for a lot of things. So, like Jody, who we had on the podcast, spoke about like infertility and PCOS, and she attributed a lot of that to her diet. And, she found that just by flipping, like she said that like she completely overhauled everything. I think she's kind of like you in that sense, Jaden, where she can just flip everything and stick to it right away. And she felt the effects of that, and she's been able to maintain that. So I think if you're someone who's listening who feel like you've been struggling in those areas, I think it's not too late to make those changes, and you can still reap the rewards of making those changes, whatever that looks like: diet, exercise, sleep, whatever it might be.